Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and I'm so glad that you're with me today. Today we are going to be talking about 5 plants to avoid as a beginner. So if you are a beginner houseplant person, you're new to this journey, you're wanting to try out some new plants, you're seeing some beautiful plants at the store. I can just imagine back to when I first started collecting houseplants, and when I would walk into a store, it was all bets are off. You know, I was seeing things, I was buying things, and I was being quite irresponsible and not really thinking about much as I was buying plants. I was just kind of like deciding I wanted a plant and then bringing it to the register. This is my dog Leo. He apparently wanted to join in on the conversation. Presumably he just heard me talking and assumed I was talking to him. I wanted to tell you some plants to avoid when you're out plant shopping if you are a beginner, just because they are deceptive in their beauty and in, I don't know, maybe some people say that they're really easy, but I have found them to not be very easy. And I also want to say, in this like scale of what plants are easy and what plants are not, it's all very relative and it just depends on you and your skill level, and more than anything, your conditions. So some people's houses might have a higher ambient humidity, which would lend itself to be a lot better for plants that need higher humidity, and other people's homes have more average humidity, which is not gonna be great for those plants that need a lot of that. I'm actually gonna move because I feel like this light right here is not a good thing, so hold on. We're in my usual spot. Okay, so I have a list here. Number 1 plant that you should avoid is a DIEFFENBACHIA. Now, this is also known as the dumb cane, by the way, because it looks like a sugar cane, I believe, and when you eat it, it makes your mouth and your tongue and your lips swell up a lot, and you can't talk, and it's really very, very poisonous, which most plants are poisonous. If you're new to houseplants, you should know most plants are poisonous, and that's really only something to worry about if you have like small children or cats. Dogs, like Leo, don't really care. I mean, Leo has never tried to eat a plant, like ever. My other dog, Cooper, did try to eat a plant. He was successful, but he was just gnawing on it. He wasn't ingesting it. So I think that's why he ended up being okay. This is one of those plants that is always sold at big box stores, and it seems to be pretty easy. Like, it seems to have like a pretty basic like structural system in its growth. It grows like in a cane and you would propagate it by division. So it's not vining or anything like that. And it's deceiving. You know, I see a lot of people send me photos and videos of their DIEFFENBACHIA dying epically. And I've also had a DIEFFENBACHIA die epically. And I think there's just certain plants that people will buy in the beginning because they think it's really beautiful, and it ends up being a huge mistake. And that is one that I have seen time and time again. A lot of people will watch their DIEFFENBACHIA die a very slow, painful, sad death. You know, one yellow leaf after the other, not really knowing how it happened, and then it ends up being really ugly, and then you feel like you're the disappointment, which is not the case. I feel like a lot of the time we, as early plant parents, will buy the wrong plants and then think that we're the ones in the wrong. Like, we think that it's our fault, and then I wonder how many people stop collecting plants at that point because they just picked up a random plant, brought it home, and killed it and wondered, you know, am I even cut out for this? I think that's a sad thing to think about, like how many prospective plant people were turned away just because they picked up the wrong plant. So, you know, that's why I'm making this video, to make sure that you are not picking up one of those plants, because sometimes they're like sirens. This next plant, my friend Adam calls it a siren, and that is any and all Calathea. Calathea are those really beautiful, colorful plants that look quite impressive on the shelves usually, and that's usually because they have just come from like a massive greenhouse where they were grown, and that is their ideal, perfect environment. So this Calathea marantaceae plant, Gupertia, they're all in the umbrella parent company family of Marantaceae, and these plants usually are on the bottom of the jungle or forest floor, and they are characterized by the movement. So at night they kind of fold up, and during the day they will come back down. They're also usually pretty velvety and very, you know, there's a print on them, a design, something like that, and they're very beautiful and eye-catching, and that is why you should avoid them. because they will trick you into thinking that they're beautiful, wonderful plants to have in your home as a beginner. And I cannot tell you again how many times I have seen somebody as their very first plant pick up a MARANTACEAE, just any of them, and it goes really bad. And actually those plants I avoided buying up until very recently. I bought three Calathea Gupertia plants in one sitting, and they're all with me still, but it's been a little bit hard. It's been a little bit of a journey to get to this point where we're all still okay. They are pest magnets. Spider mites specifically, just love them. And when the plant is not getting its most ideal environment, spider mites are much more likely to happen because the plant is in distress, and the spider mites can like sense that with their little mite spidey senses. So, you know, usually people will get a Calathea and it might already be infested, or if not right away, shortly after, and they have no idea why. So I just think that those are plants that you should get later in your plant journey when you have a little bit of a better understanding of, number one, your environment, number two, pests and how they work, and number three, humidity, when you understand how to bring humidity to a plant if you don't have it naturally. And also you might just realize that you don't like them and you prefer other plants and you want to leave space for those ones rather than the really needy plants that are a bit of a hassle most of the time, honestly. So I keep those to a minimum in my collection just because of that. I don't have time or the capacity to be constantly worried about this plant that might or might not come down with spider mites at any given moment and die shortly after. Another siren plant is the Alocasia. Now, Alocasia has a lot of different varieties, and some of them people grow outside depending on where you live, like especially in Florida, but I've also seen people grow them outside here in Missouri and, you know, other places like this, because our summers are really warm and humid, which is pretty perfect for these types of plants. But Alocasia, specifically the African mask variety, I cannot tell you how many photos I have gotten of this plant from people saying, why does it look like this? Why is this? Why is it dropping leaves? Just avoid it, okay? So you're gonna see it, it's very beautiful. You're gonna wanna pick it up. It's a siren call again. And I think that you should avoid it because it's one of those plants that one day everything will be fine and the next it's not. And I've never had this plant specifically for this reason. I've only like seen and absorbed other people's feelings for this plant because I just don't even want to go there. And I've seen so many people struggle with it that it's just not worth it to me in the least, like not at all worth it. So yeah, I think that's definitely one to avoid as a beginner or just in general. I've hardly ever seen someone have that plant and have it be happy because again, it is another spider mites magnet. So avoid that siren call and go for something a little bit simpler. If you like that leaf shape, you can go for like a syngonium. They are smaller, like the leaves are smaller, but I think that it's much easier and much more manageable than that specific plant because they are deceivingly difficult. Another plant that I see way too often people having struggles with is the croton. Now, the croton is not a plant that I have ever really been attracted to, although one of my very first houseplants I ever bought was a gold dust croton, and it was pretty. I think that is one of the prettier crotons out there, but at the end of the day, it's still a croton, and these plants are typically grown outside. People use them as a part of their landscaping, so you can imagine how much light that they can get, how much they need just based off of that. And when you put them in a dark corner in your house, they're not gonna do very well. And that's usually what ends up happening. I'm actually lost on how crotons are being marketed as an indoor plant, just because they need so much light. I think it's a full sun plant basically. And a full sun plant, spoiler alert, will not work in your indoor plant collection. It's just not gonna work because you will never be able to give that plant full sun in your house unless you have like a grow light directly above it, but I don't even think that would be enough, honestly. So crotons, while some people think they're, okay, I can't even say that they're beautiful because I just don't think that. But I think when you're new to houseplants, you see all the color and it's attractive, so you might be inclined to pick one up. And no, so often they will drop all of their leaves and you'll have like 2 little leaves at the top and it just looks horrible. So I think that's usually how it ends up for people, and it's not good. So I would say avoid the Croton at all costs. Number 1, because I think it's ugly. And number 2, because it's a full sun plant, pretty much. And you are not gonna be able to achieve that in your house. Unless you have like a south window, that might work. But again, it's difficult. And as a beginner, how would you know that in the beginning? Maybe after you watch this, you'll know that. So maybe you've heard the cautionary tale, so you know how to approach the plant if you end up getting one. But typically it ends really badly for people, and I don't suggest it because you don't wanna waste your money. I think I wasted so much money on buying plants that I thought were really cool and would be really fun, and I got bored of them really fast, and also they just stopped being pretty after a while because they weren't in very good conditions, you know? So I think it's definitely important to go for the plants that are the basic ones, like the pothos, heartleaf philodendron, those types of plants. You know, they might seem a little boring, but those are the ones to start out with. The snake plant right here, this is it's called a Bantos Sensation. It doesn't really need much from me, and it's very beautiful. So if you can find like the most simple looking plants, probably go for that first so that you can learn how to take care of plants. It's like when you're buying your child a car someday. You know, I'm not a parent. I'm very far from being a parent, and even further from having a child who's of driving age. But when I got my first car, it was not a nice car. It did its job for multiple years. Thank you, Mom and Dad. But it was not like beautiful or brand new and shiny. It was a used car from a very long time ago. And I got to hit things with it on accident, and I got to blow a tire. Like I did so many dumb things in that car. One time I took it off-roading. It was not an off-roading vehicle. It was a sedan that was very low to the ground. I would bottom out going downhill sometimes. Like, not good. I don't know why I did that, but it's because I was a new driver. So when you're looking at your houseplants, think of yourself again as a new driver. You're not going to drive for the very first time in a Mercedes-Benz, are you? Like, I hope not. You're putting a lot of trust in yourself. So if the plant price is, you know, if it could be mistaken for your college tuition or for your rent payment, you should probably avoid it. And I think, like, especially in this plant market right now, it is so common for people to like immediately jump to those quote unquote rare, expensive plants. And I just want to caution you against doing that. There's nothing wrong with wanting those plants. Like, literally there's nothing wrong with it. They're beautiful. There's a reason why they're expensive, because people want them. But I don't think you should start with that. You know, I didn't even buy a Calathea orbifolia. Now it's a Cupertia orbifolia, by the way. But I didn't even buy one until I had already owned plants for like a year and a half. It was the first plant that I ever saw on my Instagram, I think, that I really wanted. And I knew, I heard the rumors about Calathea, and I was like, I don't think I should do that. I don't want to deal with that. And I ended up buying the plant, you know, a year and a half, 2 years later, and it was only like $30 or $40. And to me, that felt like a lot of money. Number one, it's not actually in the grand scheme of things with how expensive some plants are. I saw a plant for sale for like $200,000. That's a house. Stuff like that happens all the time, and I think that it's really easy to get sucked into that. But again, I want to bring you back to those basic plants. The basic plants that are very easy to take care of, very fun, simple, and they will teach you how to take care of plants before you start spending more money on the more expensive or more sought after plants, harder to find. Because honestly, there is a lot of fun to be had in collecting those plants, like finding them. It's the thrill of the chase, really. So when it comes to it, when you're ready to start collecting those, take your time. Don't collect them all at once. You know, you got to catch them all, but try to spread it out, because once you get all of them and you're living in a house full of plants, it's like, oh, well, what now? You know, now you get to love them and care about them. But I think it's also really important to pace yourself in collecting plants. And I've talked about that on my channel before in my other like beginner videos where I, you know, talk about some tips that I wish I knew. So definitely check those ones out if you like, you know, that sort of beginner tips and stuff like that. But I have one other plant that I want to tell you to avoid, and it's just Anthurium in general. So Anthurium are not a plant that I really knew about when I started collecting houseplants, because there's only one variety that's typically sold in stores, and that would be the Anthurium flamingo something, flamingo flower anthurium, and I don't find them to be particularly pretty, so I kind of avoided them for the most part. Anthurium, like beyond that one that you can find in the big box stores, stay away for a long time, okay? Unless you have extremely humid conditions and you're willing to put in some research, I would just avoid them because it would probably be a waste of your money, which is sad because they're very beautiful and fun. But I've been collecting plants for a couple of years now and I still have my struggles with them. I mean, now that they're living in a like full greenhouse cabinet, they're very happy, but it took us a long time to get to that point. And there's certain anthurium that are better for beginners, like the veitchii, or I have a balawenum, and I think that those ones are both really great growers, even in like lower humidity conditions. Like it's currently, okay, it's 75% humidity in here right now, but typically it's like 50% humidity. I have no idea why it's so humid in here currently, but point is, those ones are typically better with lower humidity, but most anthurium need a lot of humidity to put out beautiful big growth, because if they're not getting the humidity they need, they'll not put out growth at all. The leaves will die off, and also the leaves that do come out will be deformed. So you kind of have to make up for it in a lot of other areas, like making sure that they're getting plenty of water to make up for that low humidity. But the point is, it's not a beginner plant. It's not something to pick up off the shelves as a beginner. And you won't even find them on the shelves. Honestly, it would be something you'd have to buy online from somebody, because I have never seen anthurium being sold in stores besides my local nurseries. Both of them, Helmy's Garden Center and Vintage Hill, both sell anthurium in stores, but they're very expensive because they imported them and cared for them enough to have them be ready to sell. So if you are going to buy something like that, I would suggest buying it from someone who's already gotten it like imported and sufficiently acclimated it to your environment, because if not, you're gonna have to do that work, and I think that is a really big risk to take as a beginner. You're spending a lot of money. Usually imports, you spend like minimum $300 or $500, which is a lot of money. Again, the rent payment thing, you know, if the plant bill could be mistaken for your rent payment, it's a no. So yeah, that's what I think about plants to avoid as a beginner. Take my words to heart, okay? I talk to a lot of beginner people, and I was a beginner at one point myself, so I know the struggles that people go through and the frustration that they go through, and you could really avoid a lot of that if you just don't collect certain plants at the beginning. You know, later on, have at it. But for your first year or two, stick with the basic ones. You know, maybe do one challenging plant at a time, but don't buy a bunch of them at once. That's another big tip. Don't buy a lot of plants that are difficult or will need a lot of attention at one time, unless you feel like you would have the capacity for that. But how would you know unless you're already experiencing it, you know? So I'd say start off with one, see how it goes for you, and then maybe grab another one. But if you get too many plants that need a lot of care, your life is going to be really difficult, and you're probably going to burn out on plants pretty quickly, which you don't want to do, because owning houseplants is really fun, and it should be a sweet, you know, experience to have with these houseplants. I'm very big on feeling emotions with your plants and, you know, understanding their needs, and you can't really do that when you buy a bunch of plants at once. It's usually, you know, better able to happen when you are starting your collection small and growing it slowly, which I understand doesn't really happen very often with houseplant people. We kind of have a tendency to buy a lot at once, but just take it to heart, think about it. If you are consuming a lot of plants at once, maybe slow it down so that you can give those plants that you have the attention that they deserve, so that you have beautiful, thriving plants, and you'll be confident to get more when you're ready. All right, you guys, that is all for this video. It was a lot chattier than I had expected, but I hope that you enjoyed a little more casual, impromptu tips and plants to avoid, because trust me, I've made the mistakes. I've watched other people make the mistakes, so I don't want you to do it too. So anyway, if you like these tips and you want to hear more, you want to hang out with me more often, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel, and follow me on Instagram for daily updates and fun stuff over there, because I love Instagram stories, love hanging out on Instagram, and of course YouTube with you guys. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!